In this video, I'm going to calculate 8/3 divided by 3/4 using drawings. I'm going to give my answer both as a quotient and a remainder. I'm also going to give my answer as a mixed number. I'm going to be using the quotative view of division here, or repeated subtraction. We'll be interpreting this as we have 8/3 and we'd like to make groups of 3/4, and the question is how many groups we can make. I've already drawn 8/3. I've indicated my unit and showed that the unit is split into thirds, and I've shaded 8 of those thirds. Now I'd like to make groups of 3/4, but before I can do that, I'll need to make quarters visible in my unit. Right now I can only see thirds. To see quarters, the easiest way would be to subdivide. And I'm going to subdivide horizontally. I have things split vertically into thirds, and I'm going to split things horizontally into quarters. That means that in each unit we'll actually be able to see 3 different kinds of fractions. Every column is 1/3 of a unit, every row is 1/4 of a unit, and each of the little squares is 1/12 of a unit. Okay, so let's begin making our groups of 3/4. If every row is 1/4 of a unit, then 3/4 could be those first 3 shaded rows. Notice that I'm only going to be making groups out of what we have, which are the shaded squares. I will not be making groups out of the unshaded squares because that's amounts that we do not have. The other thing to notice here is that my group of 3/4 is made out of 9 little shaded squares, or in other words, every group of 3/4 is 9/12 of a unit. Any 9 shaded squares is 3/4 of a unit. Here I'll make a second group of 3/4. For my third group of 3/4, I could take these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 squares, and they would also be a group of 3/4. The shaded squares don't all have to be within the same unit. Any 9 shaded squares is a group of 3/4, so we've made 1 group, 2 groups, 3 groups of 3/4, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little squares left. That's not enough to make another group of 3/4, so that means that we're finished. We can now read our answer directly from our drawings. For the quotient, that's how many whole groups did we make, or in other words, we've made 3 groups. The remainder is how much of a unit is left over. And so if we're thinking about those 5 little squares that remain, each of those 5 squares is 1/12 of a unit. Those little 5 squares are 5/12 of a unit. Of course, again, because every unit has been divided into 12 pieces. For our answer as a mixed number, the answer is the question, how many whole and partial groups of 3/4 did we make? We know how many whole groups of 3/4 we made. We made 3 full groups. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares that are left over, that's part of a group, and every group, we said, was made out of 9 squares. So those 5 squares that are left over are 5 out of the 9 squares you would need to make a group, or in other words, we have 5/9 of a group. We have 3 full groups and 5/9 of a group.